little after 7 o'clock. I'll call this meeting to order. Dan, can you note roll call, please?
I will note
Or
roll call.
note
I'm using
attendance,
my
please?
computer, so I will do roll call.
Perfect. Thank you. All those who are able, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? We have an agenda. It is time for open forum. Reminder to all participants, this is your opportunity to speak to council on any topic of your choosing. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. And also, this is not a discussion portion of the agenda, and so we welcome your feedback, but likely will not provide you feedback. We will either reach out individually or staff will reach out. And Richard Hahn is first on.
Good evening. Is this sound okay? I'll
Great.
stand. My name is Richard Hahn. I've been a resident here since 1980. I think I would be here addressing Agenda Item 7A, the intersection at Goodview and 97. The purpose of my remarks would perhaps go to a disparity between two incidents on state highways. One is on Minnesota Highway 47 at Peterson Drive in St. Francis. That one was addressed by MnDOT. And then, of course, we have the tragic pedestrian fatality at Goodview and 97 about a year and a half ago or so, I think. And so those two, to my knowledge, those two incidents were addressed differently by MnDOT. So what I do know is that the incident in St. Francis, MnDOT quickly came up with an interim plan, a plan that it had an interim approach, a medium approach, and a final solution. And they are about halfway through that already, and that incident on 47 only happened several months ago. I met with the mayor and a council person, Ms. Bystrom and Mara, and they explained to me quickly how much work has been done on addressing this situation in our city. So my request would come down to this, that maybe there's somebody, an employee or a representative on the council that could be a liaison and investigate this disparity. To me, it comes down to the difference that, as I think what your agenda item might be, which I do not know exactly, would be addressing the final solution. What I have is a slightly different plan, and what I learned in my meeting with Kathy and Mara is that we do have a roundabout on the way relatively soon. And my understanding is the entry speed into a roundabout is slower than the normal highway speed. Probably around 15 miles per hour to 20 is my experience. And so I am wondering if we could investigate, please, the possibility of declaring the highway in front of the high school on 97 a school zone, number one, and number two, reducing the speed as you approach Goodview and 97 westbound. I think that's going to happen anyway, because if we're building a roundabout, we'd be merely preparing our drivers for this to happen anyway, and it would give us some immediate safety solutions. That concludes what I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Jeanette Hahn.
I have handouts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You are the city engineer, so you can.
Thank you.
Would you like one?
Welcome.
So I too am going to address the intersection 97 in Goodview. I want to give you a little history. And I've lived here the same amount of time as Richard, by the way. On June 27th of 2016, Katya Lohr was killed at that intersection. I had a personal connection because I had taught with Katya's mother for many years. And so I knew Katya from the time she was little until the time of her death. But there was a lot of publicity around that. And then very shortly, everything returned to life as usual, and the intersection still remains and still is quite dangerous. So then we fast forward to November 20, 2018, when we had two 8th graders seriously injured at 47 in Peterson, right outside of St. Francis Middle School. Now, 47 is also a 4-lane road. What affected me so profoundly, I sub over in St. Francis frequently because I taught there. What affected me so profoundly was the immediate response of the community, of the city council, of the state representative who works with them. And I wondered why St. Francis and why not Forest Lake? So I actually voiced that frustration on Facebook, and Mara and Kathy reached out to me, and we met on January 21st to get updated on what's happening and talk about maybe phase 2. So on the back I have attached the document that actually was published by St. Francis with short-term, medium-term, and long-term solutions. They have already completed their short-term. Even within 3 days of that accident, when I drove to that intersection, there were already flashing lights telling about school zone, reduced speed, students crossing. There were crossing guards at the intersection before and after school, and there still remain to be crossing guards. In the back of the school, there are also lit signs flashing, school zone, reduced speed to 25, and then they have flashing lights that inform motorists of their present speed. So I think some of these things, which St. Francis has already implemented, could easily be implemented in the short term or the interim period to make 97 in Goodview more safe. Chuck Anderson, who was with us, mentioned specifically, as students come from the south towards the intersection, he suggested a barrier, even one of those construction barriers, with signage that very clearly states, do not cross here. Because the adolescent mind does not work like ours does. And when they perceive that the direct route takes less time than the route they're supposed to go, they're going to take the direct route. That's just the way it is. So we need to stop those kids from crossing at that point. Then, Richard mentioned school zone, getting a declared school zone. That would be great. We need to reduce speed. We need to inform motorists that they're driving into a school zone. We need to have flashing lights that they're at a school zone. By the way, in St. Francis, they did have the large lights above flashing that pedestrians could activate, but for whatever reason, this driver went on through. So I think there are things in the interim that we can do. I've outlined them for you to take a look at, and I myself and those that met with Kathy and Mara would really like to see some things immediately done to help guarantee the safety of our students as they cross. Okay? And I think that is, oh, by the way, we do not like the idea of a tunnel with adolescents. If you have adolescents going into a tunnel unsupervised, safety, cleanliness, all of that is an issue, and very soon those kids would find another place to cross. So I think a tunnel would be a waste of money. I really do. And I know that a pedestrian bridge is expensive, but I think that's where we have to go.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you. Susan Young.
Susan Young, 9950 199th Street North, and I don't have any handouts. I just have, as Mr. Hahn said, this really ugly T-shirt. It's plunge time. Saturday, this coming Saturday is the plunge. This really is the premier fundraising event for nonprofits in our area. There is no place else, and as a mom who sold and had to stash more Girl Scout cookies than I want to think about, and more pizzas than I want to think about, and more candy bars in my freezer than I wanted to think about, there is nothing else that gives you a 70% return on your effort as a fundraiser. There just isn't. Our plunge is this coming Saturday. It is at noon, and things are coming together really well. Our challenge pot is at $2,400 right now. As of 6:30 p.m., Bolton and Mink was a mere $116 ahead. A mere $116 after having been all day in second place. Just saying. All right? Now, I realize that you guys have designed a strategy, your winning strategy, and that at the Y, we're exercising all of our options to come out ahead and get that grant. I know that the Lino Playground folks are climbing their way up, and they are going to be working really, really hard on getting that challenge grant. And the Ranger football team, their booster club, they're going to pull out a fourth quarter win, they believe. All right? LATV is partnering on this, and they are going to be live streaming it, and they have one of the high school students that works with them who is going to be doing it on Twitter. This means that there can be viewing parties. Super Bowl, not that long ago, we all still have some snacks left over, okay? I know that there's going to be a viewing party in Austin, Texas, making sure that their investment is fulfilled and that I jump, but reassure, as you're going to your funders, reassure them that yes, they can watch you jump. And as an added bonus, LATV is going to be taking still shots. And for a $5 donation, you can get the still shots of that. They're going to split the proceeds between LATV to fund some equipment and the Rotary to do our community funding. There is still time to form teams. It doesn't take long to form a team. You all say, let's get crazy, and we're going to jump in the lake. It's dial up aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, grandmas, grandpas, friends, coworkers, especially those who have said to you once or twice, that's a really lousy idea. Go jump in the lake, all right? Remember those people. There's time to join a team. I know that there are a couple of teams that are still looking for folks. Lakes Area Partnership for Youth and Families, what I know is the Youth Service Bureau, I know that they could use a couple of folks, and there is lots of time to pledge. Now, all those pledges made before noon, sharp, will count toward the $2,400 pledge. We will be making sure that if we have checks that come in that aren't done online, that we will add those to the total, but noon is the cutoff. And finally, this is really a lot of fun. It just freaking is. And so you can watch all the crazy people, you can watch the costumes, you can hear about the different organizations that are plunging and why their causes are fantastic. I hope that Forest Lake will come out to watch. I hope that you'll come out to plunge. I hope that you'll come out and pledge. This is one of our premier events, and I really appreciate the help of the city and all of the folks. Kelly, you're plunging for a flaw. We love you. Thank you.
Thank you. We are to the consent agenda portion of our meeting. I will entertain a motion or any changes to the consent agenda items.
I make a motion to approve consent agenda items A through H.
Second.
Oh, go ahead.
We've got a first and a couple of seconds. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Motion carries. All All right, regular agenda items. Item 7A, 2019 local road improvement resolution related to Goodview and Highway 97. Ryan, I believe you're going to lead us through this.
Mayor, City Council, just start with the purpose of the agenda item is a resolution supporting pursuit of the 2019 local road improvement program. Just for reference, that's the same grant opportunity that we were successful in 2015 in obtaining to finish the south leg of Headwaters Parkway and the roundabout at Fenway Avenue. With that, I'll give some brief history just to address some of the points that were brought up earlier this evening. So obviously the unfortunate situation that occurred in 16 prompted very quick and active conversation that led into an ICE study which MnDOT would require upon reviewing an intersection or a change in conditions of an intersection. So therefore we went through what was referred to as an ICE study, intersection control evaluation. That started later part of 16 and was finished and approved in 17. And out of that exercise or study that involved the school district, city council, city staff, and MnDOT and engineering staff, the recommendation out of that study was to pursue a roundabout. Obviously, then there was some other interest in what opportunities might be available for grade separated pedestrian facilities, which then prompted into the city council approving preliminary engineering in January 18 to develop concepts to be submitted for a safe routes to school application that would fund those grade separated improvements. And during that time of around 17, MnDOT did do some short-term improvements that would be a low-cost, high-benefit that included improvements to the push-button activation stuff that was currently out there or was non-compliant, and some upgrades with that. I can't remember the list exactly off the top of my head, but I know they were actively involved with that. We also did work cooperatively with the school district on restriping the turn lane there, heading northbound on Goodview. That helped resolve some of the school traffic that was backing up in the morning, and worked very closely with law enforcement on moving traffic through that, and then also several meetings and a traffic study with the school district on bus operations and their drop-off time and stuff like that. So there were a lot of short-term stuff that did go into that, and then as we're all developing and building up to the project, we did secure $1.4 million from MnDOT. Our other local share will be funded by construction state aid. Potentially, we're looking at 3 years of funding. Therefore, part of the whole project process, we committed to trying to seek additional funds until the time of construction. What you have before you is an agenda item just to support a grant that was released, the application released due in March. Currently, there's no funding for the grant, but this kind of been the same thing historically with this grant is it's released and the lawmakers see how much interest or needs are warranted in this. So the applications that were in the queue are the ones that got awarded the work if they scored high. Obviously, coming in at this year, we have potentially 2 years of legislation discussions, so maybe 2 opportunities of just a grant. If there's other grant opportunities, we would bring that forward. This is just a requirement of that grant to have a resolution of support from the city council that we would include in the grant application, along with some support letters we've already obtained from the school district, MnDOT, the police chief, and I think that's it. So it's just building the grant application, telling the story here, how we're having to use local funds for this many years. Obviously, and then our 2019 state aid project, we have to delete some blocks out of that to stay within budget to account for this project that's planned for 2020 construction in MnDOT's share. So tonight, that's the action that we're looking for, is just basically supports of this grant opportunity in the project that's already well underway for 2020 construction. With that, I'll open up any questions.
Any questions for Ryan? Ryan, I have a couple of questions. So this particular grant, what is the cycle? When will we know what the results are?
I'm gonna guess a little bit.
Or
offhand.
likely? I know I'm asking you to look into the crystal ball a little bit, but generally those decisions, end of legislative session?
Well, right now there's no money in it,
I
so
know.
that's the unique opportunity that we would have to wait till it's funded. There I don't know the process with this one. Previously, when we knew there was some portion of money in this grant, they had a schedule. Typically, it was due in March, and they were already communicating back to you in July, August of those years. And then even if you weren't successful in the first round, the last award came back with a second round, just use the old applications from previous years submitted. So, again, it's just gonna totally weigh on support from the legislation here, and that's where our local representatives can play a key role in helping fund this particular grant that's had well more interest than dollars put towards it. So why it's a great opportunity, because it's a grant tied, doesn't have a lot of restrictions tied to it. Where some of the other ones that are all federal money, you have to go through a lot of extra hoops to get the money, document everything, and then trace it and stuff like that. So this one, it lines well with size of Forest Lake and our current funding, and would align well with this project because of the local portion of the project and the pedestrian facilities that are gonna link the existing facilities from the high school entrance to this intersection. And just to also address a couple other points that were brought up, we are exploring the implementation of rectangular rapid flashing beacon systems within this project in the final plans. And then certainly a school zone could be pursued at similar, that's either gonna be a simple yes or no based on some submittal to MnDOT, so.
So that could be pursued independent of either
That could be
intersection?
pursued part of the project.
Okay. Thank you. So one other question. So if people are interested in reaching out to representatives on this particular funding, calling it and asking for support specific to, is it the 2019 Local Road Improvement Program and the Forest Lake submittal? Is that the language that?
Correct, you could, or use the heading on our resolution here.
Okay, thank you. And then there's a lot of moving pieces on funding this project. So initial plan was Safe Routes to School submission, which we submitted and recently were denied. If this grant were successful, are the grant dollars required to be used for construction, intersection reconstruction, or could the grant dollars also be used for pedestrian facilities? And then I guess my question is, if we're gonna release local funds, if this is to ease local funds, can we evaluate then use of getting a pedestrian solution? How do those pieces fit together?
So the specific grant's not eligible for trunk highway costs, but we have the extension as soon as you go outside the right-of-way to the north and south on 8th and Goodview, and the pedestrian facilities joining those. Those would be grant eligible, and that's what we would apply the money to. Currently, that source of the improvements is gonna be funded by the city's construction state aid allotment, but I don't really wanna use 3 years of that, so if I can buy down that and get us back into a year and a half or just 2 years, then come third year, we can go back to our state aid streets and address those, the ones that we're leaving unfinished work.
Right.
And or, depending on the schedule of the county is, we also have a cooperative agreement project coming down the pipeline. That includes County Road 32 and 33, that I have to be conscious about making sure we have decent funding set aside for that, for the local share of that, so.
Right.
That's kind of all the stuff that's, big picture wise and what we've got over the next 7 years. And that's part of the story we're telling the grant, because boom, we're getting hit with 3 years here, and we're cutting back the 19 project, and we got the cooperative project coming down the pipeline. This is why we need some of this money to help relieve some of that strain in the finances. And there will be other opportunities, maybe not to the size, but anything can count. I mean, we've got all this work, why not use it and try to get as much money as you can between now and construction?
Other questions for Ryan? Nope.
I just have one. I notice here, Ryan, that it says the Minnesota Department of Transportation makes available up to 1 million to apply towards projects. Is that 1 million total or 1 million per community? And what is our plan with regard to that?
So the grant, you're eligible up to $1 million. If we come in and ask for $1 million, most likely we wouldn't be awarded all the $1 million anyway.
Okay.
We're currently going through a cost breakout with MnDOT right now, and depending on where that ultimately is and what is kind of blessed is, local share versus trunk highway, then we'll be able to make a determination that's competitive on the final amount to be submitted with the March application.
Okay.
And did I hear right, you do have a letter of support from MinDOT?
Yep.
Very good, okay.
Pretty self-explanatory, I think.
I will entertain a motion, and then we can have further discussion if necessary.
I move to adopt Resolution 02111901, supporting pursuit of 2019 local road improvement program funding from MinDOT for the Highway 97 Goodview Avenue intersection reconstruction project.
Second.
We have a motion and a second discussion. Any further items? Thank you, Ryan, for kind of laying out where we are timeline. This is an important project with lots of moving pieces on funding and lots of intersection of lots of jurisdictions. I think we need to continue to stay nimble and try to get as much funding as possible to reduce our local share. And then also keep in mind that we do have a corridor need here that goes really from 35, the whole stretch of Highway 97. And so council needs to continue to evaluate level of investment at each one of those points and prioritization of projects into something that makes sense. But clearly, I think this resolution tonight and going after this grant funding helps one of those pieces and is important. Any other discussion items? All right, with that, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, abstain, motion carries. Next up is regular agenda item 7B, 2019 State Street Pavement Maintenance Project. Ryan, you're also going to walk us through this.
Mayor, City Council, in front of you is agenda item request and authorize, I got the wrong letter here. So, to approve plans and specs and authorize ad for bid for 2019 local street improvement project. This project is funded by the franchise fees and a small allotment from each of the sewer, water, and storm sewer funds, and $200,000 this year from carryover funds that'll be designated towards these local street projects. With the budget allocated, we were able to add that northwest section of the roadway, which is 231st, which kind of takes off from an area we previously stopped to. So we're able to go a little farther than we thought. We've been able to adjust some of the bid pricing based on some other stuff that we've seen in other communities. Seen a slight uptake in some pricing, but still able to accommodate the project we wanted to with the local project with this year's budget. So the next steps would be to approve plans and specs and authorize ad for bid. And possibly we'd be coming back for award of the project in April of 19 here. Your previous step, you guys authorized plans and specs, so this is just kind of a formality I do just to bring the project back multiple times. In the event, if it was a little more political or had some other ongoing things for approval with it, but this is pretty straightforward, the project, so.
At least right now, you're just looking for a bid, so.
Yep, so we'll go out for bid, and then we'll bring the results of the bids back as another business item for you guys to award the bid. In the event bids came in really, really high, and we wanted to reject it, or some situation like that, just. So tonight's action item, we request to approve plans and specifications for the 2019 street pavement maintenance project and authorize ad for bid.
Any questions for Ryan?
Oh, I'd make a motion that we approve the plans and specs authorization for advertisement for bids as per Ryan Goodman for the 2019 street pavement maintenance project.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I would toss out there from time to time and get questions on what are we doing for the more rural areas of Forest Lake and what are we doing for the former township, and note that these plans do incorporate those more rural areas, and so I think it's important we keep talking about those investments, and they're due, and these are necessary projects. So with that, I will call the vote. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, abstain, motion carries. Item 7C, approve Ace Hardware invoices.
I make a motion to approve Ace Hardware invoices in the amount of $48.98.
I'll second.
All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Abstain. All right. Moving on, we have a discussion-only portion of the agenda tonight. We are going to talk first about refuse service contract RFP. Mr. Casey.
Sure. As some of you know, some of you may not, the current refuse contract with our current hauler, I believe, expires around the 1st of August of this year. I just wanted to have some discussion. It's my intent, unless I hear differently tonight, to put that contract out for bid to the open market, place an RFP on the street and see what kind of response we get, and then professionally review that response and make a recommendation for whatever the hauler is the best choice for the city. So unless there's some significant differences that I don't know of, that will be the way we will continue for the next couple of months here. We need to get that out as soon as we can, particularly if there's a new hauler that's going to be in, because there's some lead time in getting carts and things like that. So just want your input if there's any differences of opinion.
Well, now's the time to start. That's my opinion. That's good. Does take a while.
Go ahead.
What do you ask in terms of specifications for the haulers? I mean, do you have parameters that you set, or?
Oh, sure, we have to define what kind of service we're looking for, what the routes might be or not be, what kind of materials they pick up, and one of the complaints we've been getting is that the current hauler doesn't pick up a lot of recycling materials. It's very limited, so we'll probably try to expand that as much as possible. Obviously, the cost per pickup for the residents, we may include other options in there just to see what they're like yard waste carts, if that's an interest or not, instead of going compost. I will put in there specifications that they service all the city buildings and parks for pickup and different things like that. So it's really a service kind of a RFP that'll go out. And if you're interested, I can forward that once I'm finished with it before it hits the street.
Is it reasonable to think we can look at kind of a menu of options, basically? I mean, I'm thinking in terms of the sort of the single stream versus the dual stream.
Yes,
And
yes. It would, I would anticipate that it's a single stream garbage and a single stream recycling cart, that we don't have to, I mean, you have two carts traditionally, one is a waste, one is recycling. You throw whatever you recycle in the one can and whatever you want to throw out in the other, and go from there. And like I said, we will have other options as yard waste. I mean, these days you have yard waste, you can have organics if we wanted to go down that way. It all depends on the price and what kind of responses we get, but we'll have a full service RFP to see what options we have and then explore what might be possible.
When you talk about organics and recycling, or organics and yard waste, is the thought that we are looking to provide that service at a residential site rather than in something that's sufficient enough to get us out of the current compost?
Haven't gotten that far down the road on that. I just know that in the past when I've done these, is that has been some interest in residential composting, or yard waste, I should say. We'll see what that is. And it may not be, and since it's a subscription service, if you don't want it, people aren't going to pay for it, so we still will probably have plenty of people dropping off compost unless we close the compost, which I, of course, have no issue doing right now, or we don't have any plan, I should say, to close that, sorry. But
You'll get all
yes.
kinds of emails if you don't correct that.
I didn't want that. But we'll have a full service menu of different options. We may not be able to offer all those, or it may not be economically feasible for a contractor to offer everything that's out in the market these days, but we'll see what comes up and see what kind of hauler response. And obviously, it's always the price is usually the driving factor on this. But reliability of service and since we're not going to bill, how they bill and size of cart options, big cart, little cart, medium carts, we'll ask them for a whole bunch of different kind of ways to do things. I haven't decided, we haven't looked at any of the responses, whether we want to have one hauler or two hauler, divide the city in half, or just offer it to one hauler as a whole. It may not be economically feasible to split up the routes to 2 different haulers, for example. So we'll see how that goes.
Don't fix it.
Patrick, after the RFP, the process is done, is there, since I haven't been through one of these yet, sitting up here, what is the process for input from the residents? Just through us or?
Through you,
through us?
we will present the responses. We'll have an evaluation of each response, looking at how each individual company responded to the RFP. We'll have a scoring matrix to see how they score, and then present that to the council. And if you want to have a open session, it's up to you to look into it, or if you want to approve it, whatever night we present it, that's up to you as well. But we will make a firm recommendation on what we believe is the best candidate for the service and why, and try to show you why we picked that and let you understand that.
So are we looking at source separated as well? I mean, are we taking a look at, because right now we're doing a single stream, put everything in the same bin, and then on the other end is when the separation occurs?
Yeah, I don't know what you do down, to be quite honest with you. I don't know if all the garbage and recycling is going in one bin. I would think that the RFP will have a recycling cart and a garbage cart.
No, that's
separate.
what I mean, but it's all versus kind of sorting.
Oh, no,
sorting
recyclables?
requests.
No,
Yeah.
they should be single source. They'll find a way to sort them at wherever they sort them. You don't, I mean, it's much more efficient to have a recycling cart to throw everything in the recycling cart because it gets people to recycle more when they don't have to. Sorting slows this recycling wheel down. If you have to put the bottles in this and the paper in here, people much rather just throw everything in one cart and not worry about separating all that, and that actually encourages recycling.
What I'd like to see it also is an explanation from each one of the carriers, what is recyclable and what isn't, because you hear lots of different stories, one way or the other on this thing, and about when it gets down there to the recycling
Yep.
facility, all of a sudden they're the ones that are sorting it and throwing this part garbage and
We will ask
when
them
we
for
actually
that.
think it's recyclable.
Yeah, we'll ask them for a list of what's recyclable, what the recycling code is on each of the plastic
Yeah, let's-
things
let's
that you
get
buy, or
everybody
the
a-
glass that you buy. We'll have a list of what can and cannot be thrown away. That'll be part of the analysis. Some may take more, some may take less, depending on their sorting facilities and the ability to sell those things on the market, so.
You asked about us kind of RFP process. I would like to council workshop the RFP once you have a draft put together, just to review. And I think we've all heard a lot of input of things that are important, and we just want to make sure we're asking.
As
for
long
those
as we can
right
knock it
items.
out in one meeting, that'd be good.
Knock it out in one meeting. Can we commit to that, council?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd still like to look at that other option, though, kind of going back to the sorting. I've been trying to do a lot of research on this issue, and there is a body of research out there that indicates that single source isn't necessarily the most efficient way or the best
be.
way, to get this done.
Sure.
Particularly on kind of on that back end in terms of the processing, because the high levels of contamination and,
Yeah.
that kind of thing in
Sure.
the single bin. So I just, in order to be as comprehensive as possible, I would just love to explore every single option available to us.
And I think that we can put that kind of language in our opinion and let the respondents tell us what they do and how they do it and why.
Right.
One of the other things to look at as part of this process is, I understand historically, we have a very low participation rate, or a low recycling rate of our percentage of total refuse. What goes into recycling as a community is low. There's been some goals to do some incentives around that to increase that, but I'm not sure we've moved the needle. And so as part of the process, looking for a carrier that partners with us and can tell a story of how they have helped other communities get there through education and billing, or however they're doing it. I'm interested in hearing that.
Yeah, an education
because we
portion is
do
huge.
have, and I know that portion of, what's tagged as Forest Lake in those regional facilities really gets tagged as Forest Lake, and part of how we're not on the trend that I would like to see us on, so.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things we have to strongly point out to whoever the successful vendor is that we have to get good reporting and understanding so that we can tell what kind of response we're getting to garbage and recycling and what the volumes are. And that will tell us how we're doing, and that can give us some ability to compare ourselves to other places and other cities and other regions. That, if the Minnesota trend is 50% recycling and we're at 10, obviously we have a long way to go. But if we're at 45, and we're doing okay. So I think a strong reporting matrix on this issue is something we need to make sure we get.
Agreed. So item for future workshop, is that our next step? Sounds good. Patrick, do you feel like you have what you need from us to?
Yeah, no,
forward
as
on-
long,
on a
all I
draft?
needed was whether we're going out, and it seems like we're going to see what's out in the world and try to determine what the best responses are and what the best service is for the city, so.
Very good, thank you.
Why don't we do that with our wives and husbands? We'll get a better deal.
Next agenda item, Dan, 2019 hangar e-leases.
Yeah, Mayor, members of council, what's before you tonight is kind of the first draft of the updated lease for Hangar E. Hangar E, for those who don't know, is the city-owned airport hangar out at the Forest Lake Airport that we rent out to people who have planes out there. Currently, we have 4 spaces that are currently being rented within Hangar E, and the current rent charge is $125 per month for a hangar space at Hangar E. When we were going out and looking at the annual leases to get them sent out for 2019, looking at kind of the existing language in the lease, there were some omissions that we probably felt we should probably get cleaned up. Some language updates that we needed to do, so we kind of felt it was a good time to update the Hangar E lease, kind of bring it up to current standards. I reached out to the city attorney and kind of had her start working on an updated version of the Hangar E lease. So what you have here is just the first draft of that updated version. Want to let everybody know this has not been fully reviewed by the Airport Commission at this point. I did let them know that we are going to start that conversation tonight. So it will be reviewed. They'll kind of go through more of an in-depth review at the March meeting, and then their feedback will be incorporated into the lease that's brought back to council for approval. But just kind of wanted to start that conversation tonight. This lease that's here is based on the lease that's currently in place at the South St. Paul Airport. So we do have some, that's kind of the basis for the new updated lease. There's quite a few changes that are incorporated into the lease, but I kind of wanted just to kind of draw some attention to some highlights in the new lease. If you look at section 5, we took the definition of aeronautical use standards that was originally incorporated in the original lease and then brought it out and put it in the airport, the Forest Lake Airport use guidelines. That's a document that exists out at the airport. Reason behind that is that so there's consistency between the lease and the guidelines, so there's no need to, if the Airport Commission right now is currently going through the exercise of updating those aeronautical use standards for the airport, we would then just have to update the one document, and the hangar e-lease will automatically update to the new standards that are in the hangar in the use guidelines. So we don't have to do a double update. So both documents then will maintain consistency moving forward with any other subsequent revision. Another highlight is section 7. This allows the tenants that are currently leasing hangar space out there, if they want to make an improvement to their leased space, they're able to do so. The current lease is silent on this, and there has been some requests in the past that the hangar owner or the renters do want to make some improvements. When we put this language in there, though, it is specified that if they do make an improvement, it has to go through the regular building permit issuance process, and they make those improvements at their own expense, that there's no city share cost participation. It's strictly, if they want to, make an improvement to it, they make that investment, but that's fully on their dime. And when they vacate the space, we don't credit them back that investment. It's there for their, if they want to make the improvement while they're renting the space out. We also made an update to section 12. Again, this is kind of based on some contemporary issues that have come up at some of the airport commission meetings. What section 12 does is it allows for tenants to extend utilities out to the hangar, again, at their own expense. There's been some indication that they wanted electricity out at the hangar. And if they want to bring electricity out to the hangar, they can do so. There's parameters in it that would have to be undergrounded. They have to bear that expense of bringing the utilities out there, and they would be metered separately, so they would then incur any of the ongoing monthly charges. So that, again, it allows them to, the current tenants out there, if they want to go forward and put electricity at the building, there's a pathway for that. Current lease at this point is silent on this issue as well. This kind of sets up, if they do want to go forward with that project, how does it work, who pays for it, and, you know, where do those improvements land? And then Exhibit A, we're gonna make this align with the rent schedule that's currently in the fee schedule. The existing lease had the rent was spelled out in the back page, so and again, just from a staff's perspective, this makes the lease easier to update annually. We don't have to update the fee schedule and then automatically transitions in here, so we don't have documents that are inconsistent moving forward. Again, just from on the timeline perspective, this was introduced as a topic of discussion at the Airport Commission meeting. I let them know that we would be having just kind of initial discussions tonight. The plan moving forward would then be whatever feedback comes out tonight, we'll incorporate that into the next version of the lease. That lease would then get distributed to the Airport Commission for their review at the March meeting. We'd also send it out to current leaseholders, so they have an opportunity to review and comment. So since they'd be the ones that would be living under the new lease, want to at least give them the opportunity to provide feedback on the updated lease. Kind of take all that feedback up, back, assemble it into the final version, which would then be brought forward here for council approval. So at this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have on the updated lease, or also let's take any feedback you have on the updated Hangar E lease.
Any questions for Dan?
Well, I just think it does a better job of explaining what, there's been some misunderstandings about the rental unit out there. And the one comment I want to make about it is I was in there for a year or so, several years back, and it kept out some of the rain, some of the snow, some of the hail, but no rodents. So but I think the roof is a little better than what it used to be, so, because that was an insurance issue that got fixed, so. Other than that, I just want to make the comment that my approach to this is that it does explain things a little bit better and should take away some of the confusion.
That was my only comment too, was looking through this and not being an expert in this area, but seeing how it's a lot more clear, and before how there could have been some issues between,
right.
Councilmember Husnick brings up a question. I hadn't specifically looked at this lease with that lens of that hangar is in as-is condition. Do we feel we've got appropriate language in here recognizing that and recognizing that it is at a
Bare minimum.
lease knowing what the conditions are, and that do we feel like we've got sufficient language to
I did.
protections from damages, because it is kind of a
I think
lease as is?
I think there was something in there about the city is not responsible for any.
Yeah, I believe
I don't
when
remember
I talked to Bridget about it, I did make the request that we're not setting this up where all of a sudden we're forced in to make all these leaseholder
Right.
improvements. Basically it's, the building, like you stated, is as-is condition, and we're able to keep it in the current as-is condition, and I believe the language allows if we elect to do an improvement. We're not forced to make the improvements, so we could leave it in the current as-is condition.
And do we have appropriate protections if said rodent causes said damage? Do we feel like we're protected, have sufficient protection for those types of circumstances?
I'm going to try to find it, but I thought there was something in there. Didn't specifically talk about rodents, but I mean, it talked about,
That was going to be my question,
yeah, I
too.
don't remember exactly what paragraph it was.
Mayor, members of the council, it does not directly address the rodent issue, but there is language in there regarding the kind of as-is nature of the premises. So we have language in the lease. That doesn't mean that someone couldn't assert a claim against the city should their property be damaged. But there's certainly language in there that disclaims any liability for any damage related to the condition of the premises.
Okay, thank you. And the tenants that are currently there have been long-term tenants, is that correct? Like, this condition is not new circumstance for anybody that's out there?
It should be well known, the condition of the hangar.
What is, also, I didn't find the lease term. What is is it annual?
Typically, it's been represented as an annual lease, so they go 1 year, terms. So that would be the process moving forward.
That's
too,
the
if need
intent
be.
going forward.
And again, typically, if we had the lease document, pre-approved, basically, we're not going to make subsequent changes in, say, 20. This would then become just more of a boilerplate, change the numbers over from 19 to 20. And in the past, he's been on the consent agenda as just a standard city business.
If somebody were to approach us and ask for a 5-year lease, is the answer we will only give 1 year in 1 year increments?
I think at this point, the city's position would be a 1 year, and again, we don't have any indication to,
Of course.
to force people out. It's at their,
Right.
they're able to keep those spaces as long as they're on lease and are continuing to make lease payments.
Right, perfect, thank you.
I just had one question. That section 7, tenants improvement of the leased premises. So say somebody decides they want to make some improvements, including like an addition or, some modifications. Does that work then become the property of the city? Do they have the right to take an addition down?
I'd have to defer to Bridget, but my intention would be, I think the language would not be, they wouldn't be able to do like an addition outside the building, it'd be within their current lease. They have a certain section within, so it's like a building that's broken into, I think, 6 different hangar bays.
Right.
They only rent one hangar, so they have a certain parameter. I think it's more if they wanted to put some type of improvement on the wall. I mean, there's not really a whole lot I think that you could potentially do there either, just because of the structure of the building. But it just at least allows them to make some improvements to
Yeah,
it.
maybe pour a floor or something in, or put a shelf or something in there, as long as it's out of the way, but, that's one thing we would have some control over, certainly, it was, because if, you certainly wouldn't want anybody putting in kind of an addition or anything on like that. And so therefore, when it comes to permit time, you could sure have some control over that.
And I'm sure it just says before commencing any erection, rebuilding, enlargement, extension, or any other improvement. So it's pretty open-ended.
And I think if I recall, the language states that the city has ultimate, we have to be agreeable to the improvement that's being proposed. So I think theoretically, say somebody wanted to put on a 2-car garage off the back, we have the ability as tenant or landlord to basically say, no, we don't want to put a 2-car building out the back, so we can,
Well, yeah, they don't own the property, so
Right.
that helps too, so.
Right.
Mayor, members of the council, I would direct your attentions to section 14.1. There is some language in there related to improvements made to the leased premises becoming the property of the landlord upon expiration of the lease. So there, it's sort of those 2 sections, the one that Councilmember Byström had mentioned, and then the second one is that, and if you build it, and we allow you to build it, then it's ours. Obviously, trade fixtures, things like that, you can remove. But if you install an improvement, it becomes the property of the city at the termination of the lease.
I missed that as I was perusing this, so thank you for pointing that out.
That's the one I was looking for, Bridget, thank you.
Yes.
This is a discussion-only item tonight. As Dan mentioned, this will go next to Airport Commission and then come back to council for final approval. Any other questions of staff at this time or concerns before it moves on? All right, very good. We will move on to staff updates. Chief Newman in the back of the room, do you have anything for us tonight?
I did not have anything for you tonight, unless you have something for me.
Anything for Chief Newman? Chief Peterson?
The only item I have for you is with all this crazy weather the last few weeks is just a reminder to all residents to slow way down and be very careful. We want you to get safely to your destinations.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan?
Just a reminder, I sent out last week an email from our IT service provider regarding some updated or some mandated security training. If you have any questions on that email, feel free to reach out to me, but those emails should be coming in the next couple weeks. So keep an eye out for them.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to let you know, the RFP for strategic planning went out to vendors on February 1st, so we're waiting to get responses, whatever, I can't remember the deadline, but it's out in the street, so we should hopefully get that started soon.
Great.
Thank you, Your Honor. No update.
Thank you. Ryan?
Just some updates on the site redevelopment side of things. So last week, we had a pre-construction meeting for North Lakes Academy, which will be a new elementary charter school being constructed north of 232nd, which is north of Cub Foods, just west of the cemetery, K through 8. So they'll start up here in the spring. And then tomorrow, we have a pre-construction meeting for the BP gas station site redevelopment that will basically at the end have a full reconstructed site with 3 new business tenant buildings. One on each side has been already, my understanding is leased. The middle one's still open if it hasn't been leased, so some new commercial site there to reconstruct or redevelop the BP gas station site. And then hopefully see everybody Saturday. We're jumping for TEFLA. We're obviously in a dogfight with a couple, so if you know of anybody that wants to donate to TEFLA, that would be a great opportunity to help the cause for them to gain that other $2,400. So look for the team under the Forest Lake Rotary Polar Plunge page. That's headed Bolton and Mink jumping for TEFLA. Be greatly appreciated.
Well done. Dave, are you jumping?
No,
Are you pledging?
sure.
All right.
Are you tired, Dave?
He might be jumping, but not into a lake, right?
We'll clear the sidewalks and get everything prepped for the polar plunge. We'll do our part there as Public Works.
Right.
Other than that, there's nothing really going on in Public Works. We haven't really been doing anything, so.
Not true. How you doing?
Good. I just want to, at the council meeting, say thank you to all the guys, all my staff. I mean, we have a small staff. We can't split shifts, so there's a lot of guys that went home today that were up well over 24 hours this last snowstorm, and we did that multiple times last week too. So it's no complaints. They're all showing up, and I mean, it's fantastic that, you know, we're doing the best we can. I know we get some people that aren't happy of how stuff is not done quickly enough, or the roads aren't completely black, but, you know, I think my staff is doing a fantastic job, you know, trying to keep the roads as clear as we can, so.
We think so too. That's the important thing.
And we'll do it again tonight,
And again tonight.
and then Thursday.
Right.
I just want to echo some of his comments too, because not just with the snow plowing and moving that they're having to deal with, but the water main breaks that are keeping everybody up around the clock. And then you throw in a number of days of school not there, so now how it not only affects them at their home with their children and how they have to plan for that when they're not there or having any sleep. So a lot of dedication and commitment that they've displayed over the last 3 weeks. So if they're grumpy and tired, they have a very well reason to be so. And 3 more days of big snow coming still, so just want to echo what Dave said and what compliments you guys deserve.
Yeah, much appreciated. Help us respond. Occasionally, council will get questions about this so-and-so highway or so-and-so intersection needs some salt or sand, or help us on what the policy is and help us set expectations on what's used and what's reasonable.
So a few talking points. The number one is that we don't have 2 staffs. So the county and the state have shifts. They have a morning and a night, or a day and a night shift. So they're able to plow constantly 24 hours a day. Salt does not work very well under 15 degrees. It'll work. You'll see the state and Washington County use it, but they also have 40,000 cars driving on it, which the warm tires and everything will help melt it. For us, if we throw salt on a road and it partially melts, it'll turn to ice, and then we have another mess. So people want to see a black road, but for us, we left them all snow covered because you get traction on snow, and once they turn the glaze ice, it's not a good deal. The city by policy does not use sand. We do use chip rock. The same stuff we do when we seal coat roads. So we have a stockpile that we do gravel roads, and when it gets slick, we throw that out there. We don't want sand going to the lake. And then salt usage as well. I mean, we use it at intersections and spots that get slippery, but we do not have a bare pavement policy with City of Forest Lake. So don't expect every road to be black. We will, like today, we went out and scraped roads to try to get them, you know, scraped down, but minimal salt. We want to, you know, keep the salt out of Clear Lake and Forest Lake. So we're trying to be conscientious that way with the watersheds, and also financially. We don't have the budget that a Washington County has or MnDOT has to just pour salt on these roads. So we try to keep the roads as safe as we can. We just ask people to drive slow, like echoing Chief Peterson. You can just slow down. That solves a lot of problems. Because it says 40 doesn't mean you need to go 40.
Right. Very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for your team, as well. Council updates. Sam?
I'm first, okay. I attended the Airport Commission meeting last Wednesday, and the couple things there. We welcomed Kurt Munson and John Schmidt as our new members there, and of course we rake those guys over the coals a little bit just to get them primed up. And so it's going to be, I think, a good Airport Commission meeting, or a good commission. And the main subject there is that Silas Parmer, who he works for Bolton and Mink too, they're our engineers there, is we have like 11 people signed up that would love to build hangars out there, and we don't have any place to put them right at the moment. So we're looking at the area that would have been originally slated for a T-hangar. Well, the T-hangar thing isn't going to happen. No, we've tried it. The numbers don't work. So we'd like to get that developed into where we could build 9 private hangars in that same area. So, and also Silas has been working with the FAA, the feds, on the possibility of getting a instrument approach into the airport there, which that'll take 2 or 3 years for that to happen. And that's strictly with the feds. So, and then of course, Dan brought up the possible changes in the lease, but that we didn't really get into it a lot, so that now we can get into the meat of the thing at the next meeting and go from there. So I think that's about it for it, at least right at the moment. So, but there's going to be several things coming up that I'd like to see come up on a workshop. It isn't just the items that are here tonight. There's several items that we need to talk about on a workshop. So
Airport related or other?
yeah, airport related. Yeah, just for the airport.
Happy to
alone.
entertain whenever you're ready.
Yep, sure. Thanks.
Very good.
That's all I have.
Kelly?
So a week ago Saturday, I attended the League of Minnesota Cities newly elected officials conference, and it was fantastic. I know some people might not think that's as exciting as I did, but it was great. Councilmember Byström was there as well. They had some great speakers and really just they had a mock city council meeting, and it was full of lots of the things that we don't ever want to do. And then a really good speaker about demystifying public finance, which was really, really good. So really enjoyed it. And then ended that day by attending the Legion's chili cook-off and craft beer competition, and we have some very good chili makers. We have one that's in the room that did play, Susan Young. She makes excellent chili if you ever have an opportunity to have it. And then with some really great craft brewers in this area too. So it was really great to get out there, and again, it was a fundraiser for the 4th of July festivities. I'll attend the Planning Commission on Wednesday this week. And then the only other thing is, like Ryan said, the Polar Plunge is on Saturday, and I am plunging solo, it looks like so far, but happy to do it and excited to do it. And so we're looking for members to plunge or to pledge on Saturday, so happy to do it.
Very good. Kathy?
I'll echo Councilmember Kelly's sentiments around the League of Minnesota training. It was an excellent day and a half of professional development. And actually, my favorite was the city finance demystified. So it is officially demystified, and I'm looking forward to budget season, believe it or not. So
It's quite a session.
yeah, it really is. It really is. It just really drills it down into a very understandable series of steps and language, and I found that one very beneficial. I want to echo the thanks to Dave and crew, and to our essential services, police and fire as well, just for all of the great work they've done in really horrible conditions over the last few weeks, especially that bitter, bitter cold. You have no choice in the matter, and just need you to know that you're very appreciated. Meeting with Sharon Lundquist at the Senior Center next week. She's the manager over there, so having a one-to-one with her and doing a little tour. And then I'm curious about something I heard about, and maybe our fire chief or police chief can weigh in on something called Heart Safe Forest Lake. Is that... I just learned a little about it, and I'm very intrigued, and it sounds wonderful.
Yep, Mayor and member of the council. We started this program in cooperation with the Forest Lake Lions, Forest Lake PD, and Forest Lake Fire Department. And so we were developing this program. It typically takes about an hour to do the training. And through that training, we teach people how to use an AED properly and how to do chest compressions. And so with hands-only CPR, you don't give breaths. And they're really kind of the bridge gap between the time the incident starts until the time that first responders arrive. And so our goal is to hit a certain percentage of the population in Forest Lake, and if we complete that goal, then we become a heart-safe city.
That's great. Great. Very
And that's
interesting.
the only criteria, is this session?
Say that one more time.
Say the criteria again to become a heart-safe city?
You have to train a certain percentage of the population and then track AEDs within your community as well.
Okay.
Terrific.
Okay,
Thank
great, great.
Thanks.
Thank you for that. I wasn't quite sure, but I had heard, bits and pieces of it, and it sounded really great. So that's all I have.
Great. A couple of updates. I will echo Councilmember Byström and Councilmember Munson's comment on the League of Minnesota Cities. I was in a experienced officials track and found the content equally as strong, although I did not have a financial component, and I'm a little jealous I missed out on great content. I attended a Human Rights Commission meeting. I had made previous comments related to the Human Rights Commission and some next steps that we need to take as a city. They are a group that is in a bit of a reorganization mode, and it was great meeting with them and hearing what was important to them, and starting to scope out a plan of work that I would expect to come back to council on some suggestions, and that will help form kind of scope of work for the near term, as well as my sense is that they do need a revised charter, and then that will help us to inform kind of what members should make up that Human Rights Commission. So very much in the weeds, and there's lots of additional consideration to be done, and more to come, but it was great to get started with an initial meeting with them. Also attended a mayor's and city administrator meeting with all of the, organized by Dr. Massey. I have Dr. Madsen in my notes, but that was a while ago. Dr. Massey at Forest Lake Area Schools for all of the mayors and city administrators in their over the school district footprint, talk about goals of the school district, talk about goals of individual cities and where there's need for common work. And then Dr. Massey and I followed that up in a follow-up meeting to kind of chart out near-term and long-term opportunities for city and school district to be working together. And so more to come on that. Nothing new that comes to the plate that we haven't already talked about it, but certainly near-term things like the Goodview 97 intersection, as well as some additional opportunities we have with utilization of Fenway Field, and even things related to our school resource officer project. There's a lot of times where we are interacting together, and so good opportunity to meet and talk about some of those priorities. More to come on that as well. And then also, I was just in the EDA meeting earlier this evening. We reviewed the 2019 work plan, and then also went into a session where we decided to decline the seller's offer on the McCullough property. And we will look to opportunities both with a work session that is being planned, as well as overall 2019 strategic planning for the city, to continue to evaluate the work plan of the EDA and making sure that they are relevant and working on the things that they want to be working on and we need them to be working on. So more to come there as well. That's all that I have to report. Any questions on any updates this evening? Hearing none, we are going to move into a closed session. Am I the only one that has the closed session? Because I am the one with the language to move into closed session, I will make a motion to move us into a closed session. So I will move to close this meeting pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 13D03, Subdivision 1B, to consider strategy for labor negotiations, including negotiation strategies or developments or discussion and review of labor negotiation proposals conducted pursuant to Minnesota Statute Sections 179A01 to 179A25 with AFSCME is the union that we are discussing tonight. Closed meeting will be held in the Forest Lake Room and will commence immediately. Once the closed meeting is completed, City Council will reconvene the open meeting portion of tonight's City Council meeting in council chambers. And there being no further items on the agenda, once back in open session, we will simply adjourn. So there is nothing further on the agenda tonight other than this closed session. With that, I made the motion. I will entertain a second to my long motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
And we are closed. We need to vote. All those in favor say, well, we did vote. We're closed.
Somewhere downtown.